Most people think they need more motivation, more discipline, a better morning routine. They don't. They need to shut up. Not forever. Not in a rude way. Here's what I mean. There's this thing the Stoics kept coming back to across three completely different writers: a former slave, a senator, and an emperor. None of them knew each other personally. All of them landed on the same idea. The problem isn't that you lack drive. It's that you're hemorrhaging energy in ways you don't notice. You're giving it away constantly to people who didn't ask for it, to reactions you didn't choose, to announcements nobody needed to hear. This video is about one habit that stops that leak. I'll be honest with you, it's not complicated, but it's uncomfortable in a way most productivity advice skips over entirely. Let me describe your morning. Not to be presumptuous, tell me if I'm wrong. You wake up. Before you're even fully awake, before you've thought a single thought of your own, your hand finds your phone, and now you're reading someone's take on something, a message you need to respond to, news about a problem you can't solve, an opinion from someone you've never met about something that doesn't concern you, and then you put the phone down and think, okay, today I'm going to focus. But you've already spent the first 20 minutes of your brain on other people's agendas. You filled the container before you decided what you wanted to put in it. It doesn't stop there. At work, someone interrupts you. A meeting runs long, a notification cuts through your concentration, and you're not just distracted, you're fragmented. You're trying to hold the thread of what you were doing, while also processing whatever just happened. That's expensive. The research on this is consistent. It takes an average of 23 minutes to fully recover focus after an interruption. Most people get interrupted every 11 minutes. You never get there. You're always behind, moving, but not forward. And then there's the talking. This is the one people don't like hearing. You tell people about your goals before you started. You explain your decisions to people who didn't ask. You defend yourself to critics who won't update their opinion no matter what you say. You announce the new habit, the new project, the new plan. You want someone to say, yes, that's a good idea, go for it. And here's the thing, that's not a character flaw. It's human. We're wired for social validation, but what it costs you is real. Every time you announce a plan, your brain gets a small hit of reward, not from doing the thing, from telling people about it. And that reward partially satisfies the drive that would have pushed you to actually do it. There's a reason people who talk about their goals constantly tend to execute on them less. The Stoics had language for all of this. Marcus Aurelius called it living outside yourself, letting external things set your internal state, letting the crowd's opinion determine your direction. It's not that external things are evil, it's that you've handed over the controls. Here's a detail about Epictetus I keep coming back to. He was a slave, literally owned by someone else, no legal rights, no freedom of movement, and he became one of the most influential philosophers in history. His students included people who would go on to advise emperors. He didn't do it by finding the perfect circumstances. He did it by being ruthlessly clear about one thing. There's what you control, and there's everything else. His framework is almost insultingly simple. Your thoughts, yours. Your choices, yours. Your responses, yours. Everything else, not yours. Not your boss's mood. Not the economy. Not what people say about you when you're not in the room. But here's what gets overlooked in the standard Stoicism explainer. Epictetus didn't just teach this as a mindset. He taught it as a practice around silence. He told his students to stop defending themselves to people who didn't ask for explanations. Stop announcing intentions that haven't become actions yet. Stop filling every silence with words that only serve to manage other people's impressions of you. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, silence is better than noise when the noise doesn't add anything, and most of our social noise doesn't add anything. It manages, it performs, it seeks. Seneca, writing from Rome a few decades later, had a line I think about a lot. He said the greatest remedy for anger is delay, meaning, when something triggers you, the instinct is to respond immediately, to correct the record, to fire back, and that instinct, almost every time, is wrong. The pause is where your power actually lives. The pause is where you go from reactive to intentional. Seneca wasn't being passive. This is someone who was involved in Roman politics at the highest level. He was being strategic. There's a difference. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations as a private journal. He never intended them to be published, and in them, he keeps reminding himself of the same things over and over. Confine yourself to the present. You don't control the past. You don't control what happens tomorrow. You have this moment and the choice you make in it. What's interesting is how often he has to remind himself. He's the most powerful person in the world at the time, and he's still writing. Stop seeking validation. Stop explaining yourself. Stop reacting before you've thought. That repetition tells you something. This isn't a skill you acquire once. It's a practice. You drift, you come back, you drift again. That's normal. Okay, so what does this look like practically? Because be more stoic isn't an instruction, it's a mood board. I want to give you something you can actually use. The habit has two parts. They're related, but distinct. Part 1 is where you put your attention. Part 2 is what you do with your words. On attention, the goal is to spend more time on what you can move and less time on what you can't. Simple to say, hard to actually do, because most of what the modern world rewards you for is the opposite. Social media gives you a dopamine hit for having opinions about things you can't change. News keeps you engaged by making you feel like things outside your control are urgent. Your job probably rewards looking busy over being effective. The practice is blunt. Before you react to something, before you start a task, before you engage with someone, ask yourself, does this move anything? Can I actually affect this? If the answer is no, you let it pass. If the answer is yes, you engage with full attention. This is not about being cold or checked out. You can care about things you can't control. You just don't give them your operating budget. On words, the practice is called strategic silence, and it has a few specific applications. The first is about your plans. If you haven't started yet, you don't talk about it. Not because you're being secretive, because the announcement itself works against you. Use that energy to take the first step instead. The first step is harder than the announcement, which is exactly why people choose the announcement. The second is about defense. When someone criticizes you or challenges you, the reflex is to respond immediately, to explain yourself, to make sure they understand where you're coming from. Here's the thing, most of the time, you don't owe that person a response. And the more you rehearse the reflex of defending yourself, the weaker your actual position feels to you. People who are genuinely confident in their choices don't need to explain them constantly. That confidence comes from doing the work, not from winning arguments. The third is about validation. This one's subtle. Before you make a decision, notice how often you check what other people think first. You ask around, you post a question, you read what other people did. There's nothing wrong with gathering information, but there's a habit, a deeply comfortable habit, of outsourcing your judgment before you've actually used it. The practice here is to form your own view first. Then, if you want, check it against others. The sequence matters. I want to be straight with you about something. The urge to talk, to react, to seek approval is not laziness, it's wiring. Humans evolved in small groups where social approval meant survival. Being cast out was dangerous. Explaining yourself to the group mattered. Announcing your intentions built coalitions. That wiring made a lot of sense for most of human history. It just doesn't map well onto 2025. The group is now 5,000 people on the internet who you've never met. The approval is a like count. The announcement is a tweet. The stakes feel real, but the feedback loop is almost entirely disconnected from anything that actually matters for your life. So when you start pulling back from that loop, it feels wrong. It feels like you're falling behind. It feels like other people are getting ahead by being louder, more visible, more reactive. Sometimes they are, in the short term. But here's what you notice if you actually do this for a few weeks. The people who seem to be winning through noise mostly aren't building anything. They're maintaining a presence. That's not the same thing. The people who go quiet and work, you don't see them much. And then one day something appears that's clearly the result of months of focused effort, and you wonder when they had time to do that. They had time because they weren't performing. This is uncomfortable to sit with because it means you have to tolerate being unknown for a while. You have to tolerate other people not knowing what you're working on. You have to be okay with the fact that you're building something and no one's clapping yet. That's the practice, not the tips, not the morning routine. That discomfort and your willingness to stay in it. Let me tell you what actually shifts if you stick with this. Your words start to carry more weight. This sounds counterintuitive, but it's pretty reliable. When you talk less, people pay more attention when you do talk. You're no longer generating noise, you're saying something. People notice. Your relationship to your own goals changes. When you stop announcing them and start executing them, the goal itself starts to feel different. Less like a performance, more like a commitment. The external validation isn't there to substitute for progress, so you actually have to make progress to feel okay about the thing. You get better at telling signal from noise. This one takes longer, but it's probably the most valuable. When you stop reacting to everything, you start to notice what's actually worth reacting to. Most things aren't. And once you see that clearly, it stops being a discipline exercise. It just becomes obvious. And here's what doesn't change. The world is still noisy. People are still demanding. There will always be something to react to. The Stoics were very clear that this never goes away. Marcus Aurelius is dealing with plagues, wars, political conspiracies, personal loss, all of it, and still writing in his journal, confine yourself to the present. That's not because the external stuff stopped mattering. It's because he'd practiced long enough to know where his leverage actually was. Your leverage is your attention, where you put it and what you do with it. So here's the thing the original Stoics knew that we keep having to relearn. The problem was never motivation. It was never discipline, not really. It was energy drain, constant, invisible, socially rewarded energy drain, through words that didn't need to be said, reactions that didn't need to happen, validation that came from outside instead of from the work itself. The habit that changes things isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. You don't post about it. You just stop leaking and start directing. Focus on what you can move. Stay quiet about what you can't. Let the work be the announcement. That's it. That's the whole thing. Before I go, here's a concrete thing to try this week. Pick one area where you normally talk before you act. Could be a goal, a project, a decision. Don't tell anyone about it for 7 days. Just work on it. At the end of 7 days, check what happened. Did the silence hurt you? Or did it free up something you didn't know was being drained? Most people find the second thing. And once you feel it, you don't go back. If that hits something real for you, subscribe. There's more like this. Practical stoicism, no fluff. New video every week.